Let's start there with Luke Gazdic. He's a Toronto boy, played in Erie, and in the show with the Oilers and Devils. We start there, Luke, with people being too hard on Canada, the players. What's your take on them coming home after losing out in the quarterfinal?
Yeah, I think people are always generally too hard on kids that young. I mean, it's disappointing anytime they don't even reach the medal stage. I think that's the biggest disappointing part of it all. But let's be serious. That's not even the best team that they had. If we had every single player that Canada had to offer, we're looking at probably a different result. But even going into that, knowing some people that are a lot more fluent than me in the conversation, Sam Cosentino, one of my partners at Sportsnet, and the people we bring on, this team probably wasn't as skilled as the US and Sweden, and they were going to have to grind it down a little more. I think a lot of people expected them, myself included, expected them to go a little farther than the quarters. It's disappointing we didn't medal, but man, for people to be being as hard as they are on the kids at that age, a little irresponsible in my view. Disappointing anytime we can't come home with medal.
Cool. Hey, from the audience, I got my questions, but theirs are always more fun. Allie in Texarkana, she remembers you from Austin days. She says, I love when Luke is on the show. Do you have a fun Austin, Texas story from your time with the Texas Stars? Something real quick.
Well, I'm still the all-time penalty minute and fight leader with the Texas Stars. So I started my career there. 4 years, 19 to 22 age. Some of my fondest memories were made in Cedar Park, Texas.
It is a grand town. From BW in Edmonton says, pardon me, Luke, who was the toughest hockey fighter you faced and hardest body checker?
Oh, good questions. The fighter part, I've never felt, still to the day, anyone as strong as Brian McGrattan. And I fought him my first battle of Alberta in Calgary, center ice at the Saddle Dome. And when he grabbed onto my collar, I had never felt something like that in my life. He had this ability to move me around anywhere he wanted to go. And I remember just having an internal dialogue, just kind of hang in here, breathe, stay in there. But there was nobody like Big Ern, I'll tell you that much. Hitter.
Those are the best. Yeah.
But Dustin Byfuglien, anyone that has seen the YouTube clip of me get hit by Dustin Byfuglien, and I did a full 180, there was nobody like him in hockey, especially when he got moving. And when I tried to hit him multiple times, it was just like bouncing off a brick wall.
How many fights were you in, Luke, all time? Do you know? Do you have a stat on that?
176 all time.
Okay, well, that's a lot. So have you ever seen this? I was talking with Tim Hunter. He said the hardest he ever got hit was Nick Fotiu in MSG New York Rangers. Said he hit him right in his forehead and shattered his helmet in half. And I've been hearing lately a lot of that happening. Do you ever see that happen? You ever had that happen to you?
Nothing that crazy. I took some big ones over my career. I almost had my rib broken that same year. Milan Lucic. I squared up with him in Edmonton. And you always expect the punches to go over the top. And he came underneath and hit me with a body shot in the ribs. And oh, man, I had to take a couple seconds to make sure I still had my breath there.
Gotcha. Well, hey, I'm always glad to have you on. And you mentioned the Battle of Alberta. They're starting to talk about them in Alberta. Upcoming battles of Alberta in the second half, Oilers and Flames. And our poll question yesterday was, who's going to make it? Both Alberta teams? Neither? Or Oilers or Flames? They're all thinking the Oilers will make it, and they're all thinking the Flames will miss. Are you going along with that? What do you think about Alberta's NHL teams?
Yeah, I think the Oilers is a non-negotiable for them. I think they're 1 point out now. They have a bunch of games in hand on Nashville, playing some of the best hockey that we've seen them play this year, if not the best. Calgary is just such an interesting situation for me because I think with all those guys in the lineup and with the way they play, I'll give them a lot of credit, Rod. They work and they compete and they battle. Ryan Huska has instilled a pretty good culture there so far this year where guys really do work. They just don't always work smart and efficiently. And they have the goaltender, but I just long term, those guys that are going to be UFAs, I don't see a couple of them re-signing. So you have to move them for assets. And that's the thing, is once you lose those 3 big contracts, your team looks completely different. I don't see them being a playoff team, but yeah, I'll give them credit. I think they've performed better than I thought they were actually going to this year.
Well, what are you seeing / hearing whether the Flames are going to do that? They haven't. What makes us think this will be the year that they finally offload those guys?
Yeah, and I don't claim to be an expert insider. I like to lean on more of the analysis side, but I look at the big picture, and you have some young players that have come up and really performed. I would think that Dustin Wolf is the goalie of the future, and I think that makes Jacob Markstrom expendable. I look at a guy like Noah Hannafin and a guy like Elias Lindholm. I just think, from being a player and understanding guys on expiring deals, I really truly think that if they wanted to play there, they would have signed already. That's my thought on the whole thing, is if you're willing to drag it out this long, then there's probably something in the water that's saying, maybe I don't want to be here long term. I think Hannafin's gone for sure. Lindholm, it's looking more and more like he doesn't want to sign long term. If I was the Flames and Craig Conroy, I would be doing everything to sign Chris Tanev. I don't care about the injury concern and the longevity. I think he's such a good veteran. I think he's such a good personality to have there, even if you're rebuilding. But the 2 aforementioned guys, I think, are probably on their way out, and I don't know when. It's going to be interesting to see how Craig Conroy plays this.
Last one, and I could talk about this with you forever, but you and I have talked about the Blackhawks. I know you have an issue with their history, but look what they did. They said, we're going through a rebuild. This was Stan Bowman. He's long gone now, but you remember, Kane and Taves said, we don't want to be part of this. Stan was like, see ya. We got to do it. And now look where they are. They're down that road. It's painful, but you got to go down that road. Don't you think?
Yeah, I really do. I just see so many teams kind of like the Flames that are in this in-between, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Nashville reminds me of that in a way, where you go out and spend all this money on some great veterans in Luke Schenn and Ryan O'Reilly, but I just don't know what you're doing. What are you trying to accomplish here? Is making the playoffs just good enough? And I kind of have to respect teams like the Hawks, and even more point the Sharks too, who will probably end up dealing some of those, where they're going all in on this full rebuild. Let's get ourselves some good draft picks, maybe sign a couple good vets that can help these guys out along, but there's got to be a little bit of darkness before the dawn here. And I just feel like so many teams get caught in this in and out mentality that really just puts your team further behind the 8 ball in the future.
You got to die before you can live. Put it on my tombstone. Good stuff, Luke. I always enjoy your analysis. Obviously, our viewers do too. Thanks, man. All the best in 2024.
Always a pleasure, Rod. Thanks.
Sportsnet's Luke Gazdic from the Mitts Off podcast.